Tonight, you're going to flip a switch, and light is going to flood the room, and you won't think about it for even half a second. But for 99.9% of human history, that switch didn't exist. When the sun went down, the world went dark, completely dark, the kind of dark where you can't see your own hand in front of your face. And your ancestors spent nearly half of their entire lives inside that darkness. So what were they actually doing out there, for hundreds of thousands of nights, with no light at all? The answer is stranger than you'd expect, and it's hiding inside your own body right now. Let's start with fire, because without it, none of this works. The earliest solid evidence of controlled fire comes from a cave in South Africa, dated to roughly 1 million years ago. But fire didn't just keep your ancestors warm. It rewired the entire structure of the human day. Before fire, our ancestors lived like every other primate on the savannah. When the sun set, you found a sheltered spot, you went still, and you stayed there until morning. Moving at night meant becoming food. Human eyes are almost useless in the dark compared to the animals that hunted us. Leopards, hyenas, wolves. All of them could see perfectly fine in conditions that left us essentially blind. Fire changed that equation instantly. A single campfire creates a rough circle of safety, and inside that circle, predators simply don't come. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups have documented that people who wander away from the fire at night are still, today, significantly more likely to be killed. This isn't ancient history. It's happening in the same world you're living in right now. But fire gave your ancestors something even more valuable than safety. It gave them hours. Before fire, the usable day ended at sunset. Maybe 12 hours in summer, as few as 8 in winter. Fire added 2 to 4 extra hours to every single day, and over thousands of generations, that stolen time changed what it meant to be human. In 2014, an anthropologist named Polly Wiesner published a study after spending years recording conversations among a hunter-gatherer group in the Kalahari Desert, one of the last populations on Earth still living close to the original human lifestyle. What she found was striking. During the day, roughly 80% of conversation was practical. Where's the game moving? Which plants are ready? Logistics, negotiation, complaint. Daytime talk was work. But at night, around the fire, everything shifted. At night, over 80% of conversation became stories. Tales of distant places. Myths about the origin of the world. Jokes that made the entire camp laugh. Wiesner argued that firelight conversation is where human culture was actually born. The campfire was the first theater. The first classroom. The first place humans learned to imagine things that didn't exist yet. It's where we became us. But the fire wasn't the strangest part of the ancient night. There was something else happening, something scientists only rediscovered in the last 30 years. You were not built to sleep the way you sleep right now. In 2001, a historian named Roger Ekirch published a paper that quietly upended sleep science. He'd spent 16 years combing through historical records and found something nobody expected. Over 500 references, spanning centuries, prayer manuals, court records, private diaries, medical texts, even passages in Homer, all describing the same thing. First sleep. Second sleep. Before the industrial age, people did not sleep in one continuous block. They went to bed shortly after sunset, slept for roughly 4 hours, then woke up. They stayed awake for 1 to 2 hours in the middle of the night. Then they slept again until dawn. This wasn't insomnia. This was simply how humans slept, for tens of thousands of years. And what did people do during that wakeful window in the dead of night? Everything. A 16th-century physician recommended it as the ideal time for couples to conceive. People visited neighbors. They interpreted dreams while they were still fresh. A medical manual from the 1500s described the watch as the best time to think and reflect, the quiet hour when the mind was calm and the world outside had gone still. For centuries, historians had actually been reading these references, but kept mistranslating first sleep into something else entirely, because the idea that humans once slept in two separate phases was so foreign to modern experience that it simply didn't register. Then, in 1992, a psychiatrist named Thomas Wehr ran an experiment that proved history right. He took a group of volunteers and removed all artificial light from their lives. For 1 month, they lived through 14 hours of darkness every single night, roughly what your ancestors would have experienced before fire extended the evening. Within weeks, every participant, without exception, settled into the exact same rhythm. 4 hours of sleep. 1 to 3 hours of quiet, calm wakefulness. Then 4 more hours of sleep. Nobody told them to do this. Nobody suggested it. It simply emerged, as if an ancient program had been sitting dormant inside them the entire time, buried under a few centuries of electric light. Wehr measured their hormones during that wakeful stretch and found something remarkable. Their brains were producing elevated levels of prolactin, the same hormone released during deep meditation. Participants described the state as peaceful, reflective, almost trance-like. It wasn't simply a gap in sleep. It was its own distinct state of consciousness, one that almost no modern human has ever experienced. So what killed it? The answer is simpler than you'd think. Light. In the 1600s, cities began installing street lamps. Paris was among the first, ordered by a king who wanted to reduce crime. London followed. The night, once a place of genuine danger, slowly became something you could walk through. Then came cheaper candles, then gas lamps in the 1800s, and then, in 1879, the commercial electric light bulb. Within a single generation, the night that humans had lived inside for 300,000 years simply vanished. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. The word curfew comes from the old French couvre-feu, which literally means, cover the fire. In medieval towns, a bell would ring each night, signaling everyone to smother their flames. Not for safety. Because night was meant to be dark. Night was when you slept, and night was when you were vulnerable. For most of human history, being outside after dark was treated as suspicious. In many medieval cities, walking outside without a lantern was, quite literally, illegal. Then we conquered the dark completely, and we called it progress. But here's what it cost us. Modern humans are exposed to artificial light for an average of 7 to 8 hours after sunset. That light, especially the blue light from screens, suppresses melatonin, the hormone that governs your sleep. Your body has no way of distinguishing between a light bulb and the sun. When light hits your retina at 11 at night, your brain reads it as daytime. It delays your melatonin release, fragments your sleep, and disrupts a circadian rhythm that took millions of years to build. Researchers have found that people who spend just 1 week camping with zero artificial light have their melatonin cycles reset by nearly 2 hours, their bodies beginning production at actual sunset instead of hours later. That's all it takes for 300,000 years of programming to reassert itself. We didn't just change when we sleep. We erased an entire state of human consciousness. That quiet, reflective window between first and second sleep, the state that felt peaceful and almost meditative, simply doesn't exist for most people anymore. Instead, we call it insomnia, and we treat it like a malfunction. But what if it isn't broken at all? What if waking up at 2 in the morning and lying there in the dark isn't your body failing? What if it's your body remembering exactly what it was built to do? For 300,000 years, your ancestors lived their nights inside a rhythm that modern science is only now beginning to understand. They gathered around fire and told the stories that built civilization. They slept in 2 distinct phases, with a quiet window of reflection built directly into every single night. They lived in a darkness so complete that the Milky Way wasn't something you drove to a national park to see. It was simply the sky above your head. And every night, in that waking hour between first and second sleep, they lay there in silence and thought about their lives, their dreams, and the world they'd wake up to in the morning. We traded all of it for a light switch. And most of us never even noticed it was gone. If this changed the way you think about your own nights, subscribe. Because this is only the beginning.